Do you ever think to yourself, why am I like this? Do you ever feel like you don't belong? These are questions we have all found ourselves asking, and they are ones deeply explored in anime. Anime is a storytelling medium that dives deep into the human condition, often exploring themes that resonate on a universal level. One of the most powerful and relatable themes in anime is the struggle with identity and the journey towards self-acceptance. Whether it's dealing with societal expectations, internal conflicts, or the pressures of personal evolution, anime characters frequently reflect our own battles with who we are and who we want to become. These characters are often thrust into worlds where they must confront these issues head on, forcing them to wrestle with their sense of self in ways that are just not relatable but profound. In real life, many of us are constantly navigating who we are, shaped by external pressures such as family expectations, societal norms, or cultural beliefs, and our own internal desires and fears. It's easy to feel lost or unsure of ourselves in the face of these forces. This is where anime can be a powerful mirror, reflecting these struggles through its character's journey and offering us insights into how we can come to terms with who we truly are. In this video, we'll delve into 3 anime that explore this theme of identity and self-acceptance in distinct ways, from the cry of attention due to rejection in Naruto, to the internal struggle between duality in Tokyo Ghoul, and finally a more subtle and philosophical journey in Frieren. Each anime portrays characters on a journey of self-discovery, whether they're outcasts, torn between 2 conflicting identities, or struggling with the passage of time and loss of connection. These stories offer lessons not only about self-acceptance, but also about growth, understanding, and the importance of embracing all aspects of ourselves. As we dive into these series, we'll explore how anime uses this unique storytelling style to teach us valuable lessons about self-discovery and acceptance, highlighting the importance of embracing not just our strengths, but our flaws and contradictions. The characters' paths remind us that identity is not something that is fixed or static. It's an ongoing journey of discovery, reflection, and growth. Through these powerful narratives, we can find inspiration to better understand ourselves and the world around us. Firstly, let's dive into Naruto, a series that many of us grew up on and remember fondly. On the surface, it's a show about ninjas, epic battles, and rivalries, but underneath all that action is a story deeply rooted in identity and self-worth. Naruto is a tale about being an outcast, about feeling like you don't belong, and the journey towards self-acceptance in a world that often judges you for things you can't control. It's a theme that hits close to home for many of us, because at one point or another, we've all struggled with feeling different, unaccepted, or misunderstood. Naruto Uzumaki, the series protagonist, is the poster child for being an outcast. From the very beginning, he's labelled as the troublemaker, the kid nobody wants to be around. But the reason for that is something beyond his control. He's carrying the Nine Tails, a dangerous fox demon that was sealed inside of him as a baby. Because of this, people in the village of Konoha treat him with fear and disdain, even though he had nothing to do with the demon's attack. He didn't ask for it, but it's something he has to live with, and it defines how others see him. Now, imagine what that's like, walking around, wanting to make friends, but being met with nothing but glares and whispers. For those of us who've ever felt like we don't belong, or like we're judged for things that aren't even our fault, Naruto's experience is deeply relatable. Whether it's because of how we look, where we come from, or even just being a little different, feeling like an outsider is a tough burden to carry. Like Naruto, many of us have tried to compensate for that feeling by acting out and trying to get attention in any way possible. In the early part of the series, Naruto's behavior is exactly that. He pulls pranks, causes trouble, and craves attention, not because he's inherently mischievous, but because he's starved for validation. He just wants someone, anyone, to acknowledge him, even if it's for the wrong reasons. Underneath that loud, defiant exterior, it's just a kid who's hurting and who feels invisible. And let's be real, many of us have been there. Maybe you felt overlooked at school or at work, or maybe you felt like nobody truly sees or understands who you are. It's that feeling of being ignored or dismissed that drives Naruto's early actions. But as Naruto's story unfolds, he doesn't keep seeking attention. He begins to grow. One of the most important lessons from Naruto is the idea that self-acceptance is a process. At first, Naruto is desperate for others to accept him, but over time, he learns what really matters is accepting himself. And this is a huge turning point, not just for Naruto, but for all of us watching. We start to realize that the validation we're seeking from the outside world won't bring us happiness. What truly matters is how we see ourselves. Naruto's journey towards self-acceptance doesn't happen overnight. It's full of setbacks, doubts, and challenges, just like it is for most of us in real life. One of the major things he learns is that the very thing that makes him an outcast, being a Jinchuriki, Kaneki, carrying the Nine Tails, can also be his greatest strength. Instead of rejecting or hiding that part of himself, Naruto learns to embrace it, even though it's the reason people initially feared him. And that's a powerful lesson, that the things that make us different or that we feel insecure about can often be our biggest assets, but only if you learn to own them. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you felt like there's something about you that you should just hide or downplay because it doesn't fit in with what people expect? Maybe it's your background, your interest, or even just part of your personality that doesn't seem to fit in with those around you. Naruto shows us that those differences are not something to be ashamed of, they're what makes us unique, and in many cases can be our greatest source of strength. By embracing who you are doesn't mean everything suddenly becomes easy. Naruto still faces plenty of challenges after accepting himself. He doesn't become Hokage, the leader of his village overnight. He has to work for it, hard. And that's another big takeaway from Naruto's story, perseverance. He's constantly pushing himself, refusing to give up, even when the odds are stacked against him. In our own lives, whether it's personal goals, career ambitions, or just trying to get through tough times, Naruto reminds us that success doesn't come from being naturally talented or well liked. It comes from believing in yourself and refusing to give up, even when things seem impossible. Hard work beats talent. Another key part of Naruto's journey is finding people who see him for who he truly is. In the beginning, he's completely alone, but as the series progresses, he builds meaningful relationships with people who understand him, like Iruka, Kakashi, and even his rival Sasuke. These relationships help him grow and support him when he needs it most. This highlights another important aspect of self-acceptance. While it's crucial to believe in yourself, it's also important to surround yourself who believe in you too. It's okay if not everyone understands you, but finding your tribe, the people who see and appreciate you for who you are, is a big part of the journey. So what can we take away from Naruto that applies to our own lives? First, that being different isn't a weakness, it's a strength. The things that make us feel like outsiders or that others judge us for can be the very things that make us powerful, but we have to embrace them first. Second, self-acceptance isn't about waiting for other people to validate us, it's about realizing our own self-worth and refusing to let an outside opinion define who we are. And finally, while the path to self-acceptance can be lonely at times, it's important to find people who support and believe in us. Even though Naruto starts his journey alone, he eventually finds his support system, and that makes all the difference. At the end of the day, Naruto teaches us that the journey of self-acceptance is ongoing. It's not something you achieve and then move on from. It's a continuous process of growth, learning, and embracing all the parts of yourself, even the ones that are hard to face. Just like Naruto, we all have our struggles, but by believing in ourselves, embracing our differences, and finding the right people to support us, we can rise above those challenges and become stronger than we ever thought possible. Next up is Tokyo Ghoul. Yeah, you heard me, Tokyo Ghoul. When was the last time you heard about this series? A decade ago? Well anyway, it's a series that dives deep into the struggles of identity, but with a darker, more visceral edge, making it a perfect anime to explain this week's topic. At its core, Tokyo Ghoul explores the tension between two conflicting sides of a person's identity, something many of us can relate to, even if you aren't battling literal monsters. The story follows Kaneki, a quiet, bookish university student who suddenly finds himself transformed into a half-ghoul after a brutal attack. Ghouls in this world are monstrous creatures who must eat human flesh to survive, and Kaneki's transformation forces him to grapple with a side of himself he never wanted, a side that terrifies him and everyone around him. From the moment Kaneki wakes up in the hospital and realizes what he's become, the world is turned upside down. He's no longer human, but he's not entirely a ghoul either. This duality is something he never asked for, and it becomes a central conflict of his character. It's a battle between his human side, the part that craves normality, safety, and connection, and his ghoul side, which is violent, dangerous, and in constant hunger. For Kaneki, it's not about survival, it's about finding a way to exist in a world that demands he chooses one identity over the other. Now, many of us can relate to Kaneki's struggle, even if we aren't living in a world of ghouls and monsters. In real life, we all have different sides to our personalities. There's the person we are in public, the version of ourselves we show to friends, family, and colleagues, and then there's the more private inner self, the part of us that we might keep hidden, either because we fear it will be misunderstood or because it's not socially acceptable. Kaneki's struggle with his dual natures is a more extreme version of this tension, but at its core, it's about trying to reconcile the parts of ourselves that seem at odds. Kaneki's journey is about finding balance. At first, he tries to reject his ghoul side entirely. He clings to his humanity, desperately wanting to stay the person he used to be, but the more he tries to suppress his ghoul nature, the more it starts to consume him. This is a powerful metaphor for how we often try to push down the parts of ourselves we don't like or we think others won't accept, whether it's emotions, desires, or even aspects of our personality. The more we suppress these things, the more they tend to resurface in unhealthy ways. Kaneki learns the hard way that denying part of who you are doesn't make it go away, it only creates more pain. When we try to live in a way that only acknowledges the acceptable parts of ourselves, we're essentially living a lie, and that's exhausting. Just like Kaneki, many of us might feel torn between different identities, whether it's cultural, personal, or societal. It's tempting to try and pick one, to suppress the parts of ourselves that don't seem to fit. But the truth is, we're all complex individuals, and trying to deny any part of ourselves only leads to inner conflict. Over time, Kaneki realizes that he can't fully reject his ghoul side, but he also can't let it completely take over. He has to find a way to integrate both parts of himself, to live as both human and ghoul. The process of integration is messy, painful, and full of setbacks, but it's also a necessary step for his growth. Kaneki's journey mirrors the real-life process of self-acceptance, where we must learn to acknowledge and embrace all parts of ourselves, even the ones that are difficult or uncomfortable. It's not about choosing one side over the other, it's about finding a balance that allows us to live authentically. In the same way that Kaneki struggles to accept his duality, we often find ourselves torn between competing expectations in life. Maybe it's between who we are at home and who we are at work, or between the person we feel like we should be and the person we truly are. Tokyo Ghoul reminds us that these conflicts are part of being human, and that the key to inner peace isn't to suppress one side, but to embrace all aspects of ourselves. By learning to live with his ghoul nature, Kaneki finds a way to move forward, not as a perfect or complete person, but as someone who's trying to reconcile the different parts of his identity. One of the most relatable aspects of Kaneki's journey is the feeling of isolation that comes with being different. As he transitions into his new life as a ghoul, he feels increasingly cut off from the human world he once belonged to. His friends, his university life, everything that he knew starts to slip away. Many of us can relate to that feeling of being on the outside looking in, especially when we're going through changes or dealing with parts of ourselves that don't seem to fit in with the world around us. It can feel lonely, as if no one understands what we're going through, and that's exactly what Kaneki experiences. But one of the most powerful messages in Tokyo Ghoul is that even when we feel isolated, there are always others who understand our struggle. As Kaneki becomes more involved in the ghoul world, he finds others who are also grappling with their dual identities. People like Toka, who is also trying to live a life between two worlds. Their shared experiences help Kaneki realize that he's not as alone as he thought. This is an important lesson for all of us. No matter how isolated we feel, there are always people out there who understand what we're going through, and finding those people can make all the difference. The journey of self-acceptance in Tokyo Ghoul is a painful one, and it's not without its setbacks. Kaneki doesn't always make the right choices, and there are times where he lets his ghoul side completely take over, losing himself in the process. But these moments of darkness are part of his growth, just as our own mistakes and setbacks are part of ours. It's a reminder that self-acceptance isn't a straight path. It's full of twists and turns, and sometimes we have to lose ourselves before we can find our way back. In the end, Tokyo Ghoul teaches us that embracing all parts of ourselves, the light and the dark, the human and the monster, is key to finding balance. Kaneki's story is one of integration, of learning to live with the parts of himself he fears most, and that's a lesson we can all apply to our own lives, whether it's accepting our flaws, our emotions, or the parts of ourselves that don't fit neatly into society's expectations. Tokyo Ghoul shows us that true strength comes from embracing our full selves, not just the parts we think are acceptable. By doing so, we can find a way to live more authentically and with greater peace, even in a world that doesn't always make it easy. Let's move on to Frieren, a series that explores a completely different aspect of identity and self-reflection, time and how we make sense of it. At first glance, Frieren may seem like just another fantasy adventure, filled with magic and epic quests. Still, at its core, it's a deeply philosophical story about morality, memory, and how we measure the value of a life well lived. Through the eyes of its protagonist, the elf mage Frieren, we're invited to think about time in ways that feel eerily personal. In Frieren, we meet our titular character long after the adventure is over. She was once part of a legendary group of heroes who defeated the Demon King, but now that grand quest is behind her. The story begins not with the thrill of adventure, but with the quiet aftermath, setting it apart from other fantasy stories. The other members of her party, humans, have lived their lives and are now beginning to pass away. For Frieren, who as an elf lives far longer than humans, time moves differently. What might feel like decades to us is just a blink to her. She has centuries ahead of her, but what she's slowly beginning to realize is that the memories and relationships relationships she formed during her time with the hero party mean more than she ever understood. This concept of time and how differently it's experienced by Frieren compared to humans around her is something we can relate to in a way. We might not live for centuries like Frieren, but we all experience the passage of time differently depending on where we are in life. When we're young, a year feels like forever, and as we get older, time seems to move faster, and before we know it, years have flown by. Frieren, for all her wisdom as a mage, struggles with the idea that while she can live for centuries, she never truly understood what it meant to live in the moment. There's something deeply relatable about Frieren's emotional distance. She'd spent years adventuring with her human comrades, but those years were fleeting for her. She didn't think much at the time because she had so much more time ahead of her. This is a stark reminder of how easy it is to take the present for granted, especially when we're focused on the future. I mean, how often do we find ourselves saying, "I'll do it later," or "there's always time for that"? Frieren's story shows us that even if we think we have all the time in the world, those small moments, those everyday experiences with people around us are what give life meaning. Frieren's journey is one of reflection. After the hero of their group Himmel dies of old age, Frieren is struck by how little she understood him and the other members of her party. She realized she never truly appreciated their company simply because she thought she had all the time in the world to understand them later. It's a feeling that many of us can relate to when we lose someone important. We look back and think about all the things we didn't say, all the moments we didn't fully appreciate because we assumed we'd had more time. Frieren's regret is painfully human despite her long lifespan. But what's really compelling about Frieren's story is that it's not all about regret, it's about growth. After Himmel's death, Frieren embarks on a new journey, one that's not about slaying monsters or saving the world, but about understanding what it means to live a meaningful life. She begins to visit old places, reconnect with old memories, and even form new relationships along the way. This is where we can really see the value of Frieren's long lifespan, not in her ability to outlive everyone, but in the opportunity it gives her to grow and change, even after hundreds of years. This theme resonates deeply with real life, where we often find ourselves reflecting on the past and wondering if we've truly made the most of our time. Frieren's journey reminds us that it's never too late to start living more fully, to appreciate the people around us, and to seek out deeper connections. Even if we spent years or decades moving through life without truly engaging with it, there's always an opportunity to change. Frieren's long lifespan is a metaphor for this idea. It doesn't matter how much time you've had, what matters is how you use the time you have left. One of the most striking aspects of Frieren is how it deals with the concept of memory. Throughout the series, Frieren visits places where she's adventured with her old party, and she's often struck by how little she remembers compared to how much those same places meant to her human comrades. To them, those memories were precious, fleeting moments that they carried with them for the rest of their lives. To Frieren, they were just another stop along a seemingly endless journey. It's a powerful reminder of how memories are shaped by the limits of time. When we know something is finite, it becomes more meaningful. And that's something Frieren begins to understand as she reflects on the people she's lost. In our own lives, we often don't appreciate the value of a moment until it's gone. Whether it's spending time with family, enjoying a quiet afternoon with friends, or simply going through the motions of daily life, we don't always recognize the significance of those experiences while we're in them. Frieren's story is a call to be more mindful, to appreciate the present, because time, no matter how much we think we have, is always moving forward. As Frieren embarks on her new journey, she also starts to mentor her young apprentice Fern. This relationship becomes another way for Frieren to reconnect with the present and with the idea of living a meaningful life. Through teaching Fern, Frieren begins to see the value in passing on her experience and wisdom, not just as a mage, but as someone who has lived through centuries of change. This is an important part of her growth, realizing that she can still make a difference in the world, not by slaying demons, but by forming meaningful connections with the people around her. What we can take from Frieren is the idea that life isn't just about the big moments, the grand adventure, or the achievements. It's about the small, seemingly insignificant moments that make up the bulk of our lives. It's about the relationships we form, the memories we create, and the way we choose to spend the time we have, however long or short it may be. Frieren's story is a reminder to be present, to appreciate the people in our lives, and to find meaning in the everyday. Ultimately, Frieren teaches us that time, whether it's a few years, or a few decades, or even a few centuries, is only valuable if we make it so. It's a story about how we can spend years going through the motions without truly living, and how important it is to slow down and appreciate the moments and the people that really matter. Frieren's journey might be set in a fantasy world, but the lessons she learns are deeply realistic. It's a beautiful reminder that no matter how much time we have, what truly matters is how we choose to live it. So whether it's Naruto's relentless journey of self-discovery, Kaneki's internal battle to reconcile his human and ghoul sides, or Frieren's quiet reflection on meaning and time, anime has a special way of delving into identity that strikes a chord with all of us. These characters, despite living in fantastical worlds, go through struggles that feel deeply human and realistic. They mirror the questions we often ask ourselves: who am I? What defines me? In the intro, we asked, why am I like this? And to find what truly shapes identity. As we've explored, identity isn't something fixed or easily defined. Naruto teaches us that it's forged through connections, perseverance, and the desire to grow beyond the person you were yesterday. Kaneki shows us that accepting all parts of yourself, even the ones that scare or challenge you, is the key to self-acceptance. Frieren, on the other hand, reminds us that identity evolves with time, shaped by memories we carry and the people we meet along the way. In real life, we face similar pressures to define ourselves, whether it's through societal expectations, career goals, or personal ambitions. But like these characters, we learn that identity is more about the journey than reaching a final answer. We're consistently growing and changing, and that's not only okay, it's essential. What we can take from Naruto, Kaneki, and Frieren is that it's not about being perfect or having everything figured out. It's about embracing the challenges, accepting our flaws, and continuing to grow. Our experiences shape our identity, the relationships we nurture, and the lessons we learn along the way. As we conclude, remember that you don't need to have all the answers right now. Like these anime characters, we're all on our own unique paths, constantly evolving and adapting, and that journey of self-discovery, filled with both ups and downs, is what ultimately shapes who we are. Keep moving forward, embrace the process, and trust that with each step, you're becoming more of who you're meant to be.